Huh?
Have a good table.
Yeah.
Please, I did. Glad you're here.
Who?
I'm glad you're here.
Oh.
Has that started already, Diana?
Yes.
I need to come
Not yet?
Live and direct. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for being here. Today is October 27th, 2025. We are at the Public and Transitional Housing Committee meeting. My name is Michael Pimentel. I am chairing this meeting in the absence of Chairperson Daniel Barber. We like to start off with introductions, and we do have some new guests. So please introduce yourselves, however you would like. I'll start off with you.
My name is Jadian Buxton.
Hi,
I'm
Jenny.
Miss Anthony. I'm a new board member of Community Board 1. I'm coming to just observe because I am interested in joining this committee, so I wanted to get my feet wet first. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana. Good evening with the Bronx Community Board 1. I'm the community associate here, so welcome.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I live in the neighborhood. I haven't joined the board yet, but I've been joining some of the different committee meetings to get like a good feeling about what I want to join and begin to be a member of.
All right.
So I'm just observing.
Nice.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Having friends for community residents.
Hi, I'm Mari. I'm just live in the Bronx, and I'm like curious about like the mental situation, like what's going on, how it's dangerous for the city and stuff. So I wanted to come to see.
Are you
Nice.
representing the organization?
I'm part of an organization, but I'm not representing.
What's the name of your organization?
We're called UPBX. We're like we're an organization for Puerto Rican liberation. But we do like a lot of work.
Yeah, I heard about you all. BAI.
Yeah, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in the area. So.
Yes,
Welcome.
We love you.
yes.
Good morning, I'm in Community Board 1. I chair policy and legislation.
My name is Chairman Anthony Jordan, District Manager to the board. Just a reminder to everyone, if you're speaking for the first time for our audio recording system, please say your first and last name so the system could be able to pick up your voice and record accurately. We're also being broadcast live on our YouTube page. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. District Manager. Old business, we have the Bruckner Migrant Facility. I don't have anything in front of me regarding that, but I do know that that plan came in front of this committee, I believe January of this year, before they opened, which they kind of rushed and they sprung on us. So I just anecdotally, I was around there a couple weeks ago, and it's a total disaster. I was driving under the Bruckner, and all of a sudden I see like a bunch of men like in the dividers of the highways just hanging out. They're like scattered all over the place. There was a lot of litter everywhere, and there was one police car.
Yeah.
And they were just there, just standing there. Not even like patrolling at all. I mean, it's just one squad car, so they're not gonna do much. But all that to say that there's a lot of it's not as orderly as we would have thought, or at least what they said. How they said it was gonna be. So that's my experience with that. Before we shoot it to you, Mr. Francis, is there anything?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to remind everyone that we found out recently in January, as the chair mentioned in the press, that the administration had agreed to open up all male 2,700 bed migrant facility in our district for our brothers and sisters who are migrants and are here looking for housing. We had a lot of questions, as we all mentioned, with the meeting we held at Lincoln Hospital to understand the operations of that system. And before it started to open to operate, we asked the administration that be done with our other city-ran facilities like the juvenile detention facility and others to visit to understand how we operate, to make sure a couple of things, that our brothers have the opportunity to make sure they have adequate housing, resources and services, and other opportunities that's provided. The administration at the time of that conversation, promised to provide us with our ability to be able to tour the facility. Since then, after multiple requests by this committee chair, the city has reneged, unfortunately, on that request or that promise to be able to allow us to visit the facility. In addition to that, we understand that facility has grown to not only be the space for the men who live in who seeking migrant assistance. Only that there is also a space for women with children who are also identified as migrant to go and pick up the mail in that location. Unfortunately, the operations also has been concerning because, like the chair mentioned, there has been all type of activities that have been happening along the highway near that facility, without giving out the exact address, along which includes haircuts, food being prepared, all kind of other activities that is not conducive to what the administration originally promised. And it was concerning to us and to my office because we want to make sure that our brothers are protected, given that what has been happening with the ICE roundups, I call them, that is happening in our communities. We heard of them happening in Canal Street. We heard them happening in other places in the city, and how, unfortunately, the political climate, and this is my opinion, has where the federal administration has been turning up the heat around enforcements. But in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that our brothers who were in that facility had actual activities, vocational training, counseling, access to receiving their docket, to make sure they're getting their documents or getting their status taken care of, ensuring that there were actual resources and services for them in the facility, and that we also provided some public safety in that area because we didn't want our brothers to be taken, or anyone in the area to be taken advantage of, given the fact of a couple of things: language barriers, understanding of the law, and laws that are around, et cetera, et cetera. And so we wanted to make sure that these resources were being provided, were they able to be in the facility while doing various hours. Was there a curfew? What was the security looking like? What were the opportunities for folks who want to participate to help volunteer to make sure that they have resources and services, other than people who were looking to become likely employed in that facility. And unfortunately, the administration, when told how many of our certified board members who, and that means all of us here today who are part of the community, to go and visit in a controlled, supervised environment to visit the facility, they thought that anywhere between 5 or more was too many. Well, that's unfortunate because in our community we have very progressive, organized people who all want to be aware, but also want to be progressive to understand, supportive to making sure that these folks, our brothers who are in that facility, have basic human rights and resources and services at all times. And so the chair asked me to bring this back to this committee because we wanted to discuss what will be a form of action and understanding what we should be able to have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that under the city charter that we have oversight and advisory oversight to resources and services to all city run facilities. This is not to the Department of Homeless Services. This is to the HERC system, which is the Mayor's Office for Asylum, I believe, to be able to provide who oversees the specific facility. We had about a 2-3 hour discussion at Lincoln Hospital that evening with a lot of questions that our community and our board asked that we promised to get some turnaround back information, which we haven't gotten officially or unofficially. And I say unofficially because perhaps in conversation with my work with the city officials. And so while I wanted to bring this back to the committee to make them aware about what the ask was and what this office received back, and then what will be a formal, either this month or next month, meeting, a formal response back to the city about course of action that this community board is looking for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. District Manager. I'd open up the floor. I would like to open up the floor to anyone who has any comments on this particular situation. You had a comment, Mr. Francis?
Yeah, at the 45th Council meeting, the same issue came up, and they said their policy is just have a car station out there, we're just gonna sit there. And also, we became a rock and a hard place, because due to the Immigration Act of 1965, when, repealed the Immigration Act in 1924, that all the immigrants come here. New York City is the only city in the United States where the court has mandated that anybody who wants shelter is entitled to it. So when I found out and learned that a whole lot of these little towns and stuff that are outside the city and outside the state, I began to get homeless people one-way bus tickets to New York City due to that particular statute. This should get done and it's going on today. Also, that intake center, so it's the only one in the whole city that's out there. It's located on 139th Street between up on the hill, piece, side business and so forth. That's the only one in the whole city that anybody who wants a place to stay home and so forth goes to that one center there where they direct them to a shelter of some sort. That's the only one. Then we get shelters is why, Lord, and it goes straight back that this district here has one of the lowest voting turnouts in the city. And every politician in the Bronx, except the council person here, said no to a particular shelter, jail, everything else. But this council person up there okayed it. Not only that, that jail that's over there on Washington Avenue and 163rd, 161st Street, that used to be a New York State youth jail. It's empty now. But it's New York City's in negotiations to buy the place. Now I remember when they took that place down there and called the new spot because I protested against it. How you gonna put a jail across the street from an elementary school? But they did it. Even though we stopped the homeless shelter, the single the homeless shelter will be put across the street from Mother Hill County.
Now, let me keep
Yes.
it specific to the
Well,
migrant.
basically what it is, because of the low voting turnout and the politician who represents this district, we get squeezed with it. We're gonna have to keep on having.
Yes, the
So, I don't recall. So one, the legal aid has a unit that focuses on shelters and by law have to enter every single shelter. And I don't even remember, because January feels so long ago, what colleague I spoke to in regards to that, but they by law enter every single shelter. And so I'm very interested to see how many migrants are actually in the shelter shortly after, like once, Trump got into office. I know a huge portion of our migrant population self-deported. And so I do not believe there's even 2,000 or 1,000 people in that shelter. That doesn't take away from the fact that there are people who are doing stuff outside of the shelter. And I agree with the DM, that the district manager, that there's lack of things for them to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to remain because I'm not sure if they're qualified for temporary work, temporary work authorizations in order to do anything else, actually. And so I don't know if the ask is like designated locations for them to do what they're doing versus being in between the highways, you know what I mean? Like a designated outdoor space for them. And we know they're not gonna be outdoor for long as it gets colder and colder, you know what I mean? And so I don't know if there's like a center they can utilize or something like that. The question is, I'm not sure why they're outside versus inside the building and what the limitations for activity is inside the building. Like, you can cut hair inside a building. People do that all the time. And so I'm not sure. I think it'd be interesting to know, one, how many people are in the shelter in general, given the political climate that has existed since Trump took office. And then why do they feel like they need to go outside to do some of this activity versus doing it inside of the facility? And so even though we cannot give them work authorization that is beyond like the state of New York, can we create designated space for them to do whatever they need to do?
Yeah, well, sorry, continue.
And so that's like my question.
That's actually a point of action that we can take, right? How many people are at the shelter currently?
We could develop a letter that, in the work of Moines committee, if it's developing, I think, very pointed letters with pointed questions saying, since we didn't have the opportunity or the request to visit or tour the facility was denied or was not followed up on by the city. Perhaps maybe we could write these points of action or I could develop some language and share with you so that you can overview it. It depends on what you guys.
Yeah, and just to remind me, like, I would say, like, maybe that unit, you gotta, like, I gotta remember the unit, but, I know who to call to,
Right.
that they know how many people are in every single shelter in the city, because
They know.
we are the one who sued the city and created the right to shelter. That is not a law, that is a case, and we monitor that case. And so when Eric Adams did not, we as Legal Aid Society, when Eric Adams did not want to get the migrants, then we sued for that. And so we are the monitors of the lawsuit that creates the right to shelter. And so our office is fully aware of every single nook and cranny about the right to shelter, and then also get a daily report for department. See, the thing is, the migrant shelters fall under MOA, the Mayor's Office of Immigration or something, but I do think we still oversee that as well. So I say we can send them questions. I can see if the unit will come here or something to talk about the shelter. And then the biggest question, I think it's very easy to figure out how many people are in the shelter. Actually, I think that number changes, but we can figure it out. I think they have to disclose that information anyways. But why can't they cut hair inside the shelter is the bigger question. And why can't they do some of these activities
Well,
inside the shelter is another question.
that was my issue with picking that particular place, that it's so remote. And there's not much to do out there, and we also don't know the layout inside, like, you know, how do they live in there, and if they have any communal spaces, like you
Yeah.
said, for them to do things, because there's a reason why there's a lot of them outside.
Yeah.
But
So,
it's tired of being inside.
And so I don't know if they're cutting hair for money. I don't know if they're selling food for money. I don't understand if it's like a hustle. I'm not sure.
But see, it goes to the whole part of the point. And
Before we move on.
this goes straight to the heart of the situation, but this issue came up, back in the 70s class, kid. Why all these people coming here and so forth, and how come they can't have a fight to correct what's incorrect, then they come to the United States and piggyback with those who came, who's already here and fought to lay the groundwork. Because keep in mind, the Immigration Act got passed after the Voting Rights Act of 65, which came after the Civil Rights Act of 64, due to phenomenal cause and effect of every action, there's reaction. But when you go back to the Immigration Act of 1924, which stopped immigration, period. I had a uncle work at Ellis Island before they shut down in 54, and the stories at that time getting small. But I remember what they said about Ellis Island. But then when you research why Ellis Island opened up, you're gonna be shaking your head. Because the same message being circulated over and over again. I'm gonna finish this with this. What we're going through right now is nothing new. The same message jumping up in the Eisenhower administration when he was president. They had a project called Operation Wetback, where they rounded up all the Mexican immigrants that came over here illegally, because they had basically stopped the immigration from outside the country after World War II. And then boom, when Kennedy and them came there and so forth, that was it. Until we got the mess we got today. Under a different name, same mess.
It is a problem. So,
You want to share anything?
yeah, if anyone else wants to share anything.
Let's move on.
So then the point of action would be to ask how many people are being housed currently.
We'll work with this committee and with policy and legislation to develop some questions and then formulate format. There we go. My brain had to distort 5 o'clock. Ask those questions and then approve of all the committee chairs to send it out so that in the future. But the primary thing is to understand how many people are in the or in the facility, amongst other questions that are
Yeah, and like if there's a communal areas.
where activities can happen, right?
Didn't they say 3,000?
No.
2,700
700?
or 200. It's
Yeah,
2,200.
it's 2,200.
So one of those numbers I know is so 2,000.
Okay. Moving on, if no one else has any comment, into new business, we have the South Bronx NYCHA update. I'll kick it to the district manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as we know, back just after 8 a.m. on the, I believe on the 1st of October, there was an incident that was reported at the Mitchell House in Niger Development. We know we have over 11 developments, and we have one of the highest portfolio of Niger developments in the district. And this building, number 4, 205 Alexander Avenue, in the early parts of that time was an explosion that in the chimney that basically shook the whole housing the development, but in addition had recurring effects that have been impacted over a period of time till today. Gladly, no loss of life or no injuries happened in that accident. The community board was on site from the early mornings, and when that first happened to fairly recently, to about 2 weeks ago, when we've been assisting the residents with to ensure they get hot meals, delivery of services, access to temporary housing, ensuring that their mental health services be provided on site, and in addition to ensuring that they also had access to supplies, and even those who had pets or emotionally attached to animals, to ensure that it was going down, that they would still stay connected. In addition, to make sure that the young people had transportation who were in the hotels to that could come back, transportation to come back to go to school each morning. Some of the actions, the things that continue to happen is, of course, spotty heat and hot water services, in addition to enough gas to the entire development. That has been something that has been extremely concerning. So our team, we have been working tirelessly with the Department of Buildings, the fire department, and Cognizant, along with the contractors that NYCHA has on staff, to be able to ensure that we can hopefully get the development to pass an integrity test. Multiple buildings have been failing those integrity tests, and it may or may not be associated with the explosion, because the explosion was only in one building, but other buildings individually had the integrity tests, and those buildings continue to fail. This is something that has consistently been a concern about what's been happening about the over $80 billion capital improvement tag that's been needed for NYCHA, that we all have been concerned about. The community board has had, like I said, has staff on call multiple times, meeting with NYCHA executives, to the emergency responders, to this process, to ensure that, again, our priorities, making sure our most vulnerable New Yorkers who live in NYCHA development, which means our children, our large families, and our seniors, have access to hot meals, because right now the residents only have to prepare their meals only one hot plate or a crock pot to be able to prepare their meals. Unfortunately, this has been something that NYCHA residents have become accustomed to, and it is embarrassing, and amongst other words that I have for NYCHA about what's been happening. We know our city, our New York, has been investing dollars often into the capital needs, operation needs of NYCHA. The state has had their battles with funding, but the federal government has been disinvesting in NYCHA for years, if not decades. This has been an ongoing fight of concern. And so, with everything else that's happened with the government shutdown on the federal level, we have been working to make sure that our charity partners have been working to organize with potential benefactors to ensure that residents have access to resources and services on site, whether it's continuously trying to provide hot meals at least twice a week, to other supplies, in addition to making sure that our major priority, and we discussed it to our district service cabinet meeting, that FDNY and public buildings fast track whenever possible the testing and other things that are needed to put together to ensure that the gas is restored. Unfortunately, it is our fear that it's not going to happen at Thanksgiving, and likely not happen during Christmas. So again, 2 major holidays where NYCHA residents are left basically burdened by this situation. I'm bringing this up because the chair of the committee and I had a conversation that we need to bring NYCHA leaders to the table, to this committee, once again, to explain about what their plan is about dealing with this issue, but also the belonging issues around our entire NYCHA portfolio. Like I said, we have one of the largest ones in the South Bronx, and we need to be able to make sure that we can hold hundreds of thousands of our residents, at least know that their community board is on their side to making sure that we continue to stop putting lip service to what is the need in NYCHA. So I'm not talking about only the 80,000 or the $80 billion repair, because that's a long-term plan. But what are we doing to make sure that the needs around plumbing, the issues around gas, the issues around mold, lead, and all the other issues that our residents have been going through for, again, like I said, for so long, and to devise a point of action for this committee, this community board, to have with NYCHA, especially as we begin to start having conversations about what a new administration looks like for this borough. The South Bronx, in my personal opinion, has always been on the bottom of folks' list to determine what the standard is for quality preservation and quality of affordable housing, and no longer can that be something in the standard that we stand for. So this is on this for this committee to be able to devise a request to the NYCHA to be able to appear in November or in the new year about this issue as it relates to public housing. Thank you, Chair.
Not only that,
So I will add on, let me just add on to this before you go. So I have been, I was at the district cabinet meeting, and then at the Hype Center, the Legal Aid Society's NYCHA unit came in, and I spoke to Ramona, who used to do, say, Section 9 work, and our former community board member. And so what I've learned, at least, is that when the explosion happened, there's one boiler that heats up the entirety, all 10 units at Mitchell. That one boiler is located in the building that had the explosion. Cause of explosion is still unknown. But because of the explosion, they turned off the gas as like a safety measure. To turn the gas back on, bylaws of Con Edison, right? You must test the pipes, which our district manager was just stating. And the pipes test is the integrity test. They're not holding the percentage of gas they need to hold. Unclear how long there's been a gas leak, this is why they're feeling. The integrity test and like DXS, 6 out of 10 buildings. Last time we checked, so Thursday, I think, I was hearing this last week, Thursday, 6 out of 10 had failed. They hadn't tested the other 4. And as a result, no gas for the entirety of the building. 100% no cooking gas well past 2025. They're not gonna have well past, guaranteed, no doubt about it, guaranteed. They will not have cooking gas. Some people have one hot plate and the crock pot. If your family unit size is more than 5, you should get 2 hot plates. And then there's 3 external boilers, as the district manager said, is giving them spotty. So some people in the lower levels are hot as hell. And then some people on the upper levels are saying they don't get heat or their hot water is spotty. There is concerns from the Legal Aid Society that because everyone's using electric, there's gonna be like a, over like an electrical fuse, because some people are buying their own hot plates, to do more stuff. Then I learned people were like, I should stop paying rent. And I would say the people at the Hype Center I saw on Thursday were residents of Mitchell, but they weren't, I think they were only from the building, from the explosion. It was like 20 or 30 people, so I'd say there was a large amount of people, but obviously there's 10 buildings in in Mitchell, and Ramona said she had no idea about this meeting. And they wanted to not pay rent. The lawyers advised against that. So because they get hot plates / crock pots, that means technically speaking, they can cook. If they're not getting heat and hot water, that is, I forgot what you can do an administrative hearing about that because you do have a right to heat and hot water. They recommended that people get thermometers so they can take a picture of the temperature in the house to create evidence that the house was below a certain heat. However, the administrative judges that rule on that cannot grant abatement. The only way you grant a rent abatement is if NYCHA proceeds with a non-payment. And then your defense is, I didn't have heat and I didn't have water, so you should decrease some of this cost. Again, the legal aid attorneys did not advise people to stop paying rent. Instead, they advised for Community Board 1 to write a letter to all elected officials on both federal, city, and state level to demand a rent credit to every single tenant at Mitchell. That credit is a percentage. It's not going to be free rent, but 20% off, 15% off. I don't know. I'm just going to follow up with them to see what type of credit was given in the past. They also thought it would be good for the TA to write that similar letter, but Mitchell might be voting in a new tenant association president. I'm very confused about who the TA is at NYCHA right now, the president at NYCHA is right now. But that's when I called Ramona to ask who's advocating for the tenants and to organize a letter. And so I think for sure there'll be 2 letters, one on behalf of us for a credit, and then I need to talk to the legal aid attorney to see when other units dealt with some type of outage like this, what amount of credit was given to them. And they thought that would be best, and it looks like there might be even a history from other buildings of getting a rent credit for the discomfort of the tenants. I also learned that they are getting a lot of food. Food is being dispersed at Mitchell on a regular basis. How that information is being disseminated, I feel like might be a little clunky.
By food, what do you mean, prepared food?
Sometimes prepared, sometimes canned. I'll let Herman add on that. But different organizations are coming in. There's a group I want to work with called Ghetto Gastro. They're these Black socialist chefs. They have a huge platform, and they're Black Bronx people. And he was my cousin's there, and I think they're also working together to get them food. So I wouldn't be surprised if they get a nice thing for Thanksgiving, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone does it big for them for Christmas. Unclear who, right? It's a lot of people, but I think there's more. It doesn't seem well organized, but there are people trying to give them hot food, and there is a system in place for the people. But I was just there on Sunday. Someone said it took 4 hours to make spaghetti with their hot plate, so it's all over the place.
Are they working around the clock? Do we know if they're working around the clock?
He's got help shipment up here.
So there is, there are some activities, our understanding is some activity that has to take place where residents are home, and there are some activities where residents that could happen without residents being home. So that it is, I cannot say it's 24 hours because it is it's working. Most of our residents are now working residents. So the answer is not. The only thing that's 24 hours is monitoring the boiler and hot water system, because that we have to make sure this one of the promises by all the elected officials that the system be monitored 24 hours and will let us know if it fails and to get back up as quickly as possible. So the answer for as far as replacing pipes or anything else, it's highly unlikely that that's 24/7.
I know they're cutting everybody's things. They're cutting people's pipes that go to their stoves.
The apartments, right?
Yeah, their apartments, this yellow pipe, they're cutting them and sealing them off, right, when they fail.
Yeah.
Again, like he said, Ramona's position is that we're supposed to be getting electrical stoves. I heard there was an article that they're supposed to be getting electrical stoves. And so they think that would be faster, but I don't know what's the plan for the electrical
I
stove.
think out of curiosity, real quick, we should understand what it is that they're doing right now. Why would that take so long? Because if it's all in one building, right? Let's say because one building knocked out all the other 9 in terms of gas. Right?
No. I think you're confused, okay?
No, you said that in terms of
The boiler blows up, right? For safety
Was it
measures.
the boiler or the incinerator?
Well, there's an explosion, okay?
Was it the incinerator shaft?
And they turn off the gas
Yeah.
for safety purposes.
Right.
Okay? That means and it's not normal that your cooking gas is turned off. That's not a normal thing.
Hold that point right there.
And then, hold on, to turn the gas back on, they discovered a new problem because I started saying, why aren't you checking the gas pipes on a regular basis? And they said they don't have to check them unless they're turned off, and to turn them back on by law, you have to check the pipes.
There's a high level and a low level pressure.
So that means the pipes weren't working for a long, like there was probably a gas leak
Central smoke.
for a long time.
Well,
Let's also all get the conversation. And I also want to add that for the chair, for everybody's understanding, there are 1,602 units in that complex.
how many?
In that, there are 3,462 official people who live in this. So that number, of course, it could be much higher. 10. So,
Patterson got what, 24, 27?
right, Patterson's pretty big.
now.
No, Patterson got 1,275 apartments.
Right.
But he got more buildings, but he got the 6-story buildings.
Right.
And my head only got 8 buildings.
What is Mr. Francis?
Oh, I was informed that it happened in the incinerator shaft that
So what happened was the gas, let me just make it quick because I want to get everyone around. So the gas leak was allegedly, it's still being investigated, so there's no way to be able to tell.
That's the point.
But what it did is that the gas likely, when the explosion happened, it escaped through the chimney that was outside, and that according to preliminary reports, the chimney collapsed like it's supposed to, where it exploded and fell directly down.
That goes straight to the point right there. Because a whole lot of people seem to forget at one time at night, all the garbage were burned in the incinerator. They stopped that, but I do know this was the incinerator. They're supposed to be inspected and cleaned on a regular basis. That's why they had the maintenance people live there. When they stopped doing that, somebody dropped the ball and did not go in there and clean and inspect the incinerator.
We don't have anything official, so the board cannot.
But the incinerator,
Speculate.
I understand that quite well, but the incinerator imploded, and they were doing what they're supposed to do. But right now, some maintenance person came in the apartment I live in about 3 months ago. It took pictures of everything, did all the mold, the bathroom, everything going around. So I asked them, when y'all come out and fix this stuff up? I'm still waiting. And I was not the only one when the maintenance person came in and took their pictures. Why? The city wants to get out a public house. They want to privatize it. And you got this Andrew Cuomo who's falling very. No, this is where I'm getting nasty.
Mr. Francis,
You have to get other people around.
No, but
We understand that there's a privatization push, I hear you.
Well, hear this out. When
But
Andrew
how about
Cuomo
the other people?
when Andrew Cuomo was head of HUD under Clinton, he didn't do nothing for
Okay.
public house in New York City. And when his father ran for mayor, and okay, Scott, his campaign saying was no public housing in Queens. That's Mario Cuomo.
Okay, so we're gonna let
Thank
other
you.
people.
Your digestion.
Okay. Who else?
I would remember that message.
Anyone else have anything to share? Yes.
I have a question. Just for clarification, all 10 buildings don't have gas, or is it just the one?
No, 10.
All 10 don't have.
Well, then,
Yeah.
Which sounds bonkers, but yes.
But that's what, this is my understanding is the gas, the pipes, because remember, all 10 buildings,
Mhm.
6 out of 10 buildings, pipes were tested.
Right.
And they failed the integrity test.
Mhm.
That means we know they tested the building that had the explosion. 5 other buildings had no explosion, and they still failed the integrity test. That's why I'm saying the integrity test, the pipes were already not in the best state,
Mhm.
independent of the explosion.
Right.
Whatever caused that is independent. Like, we discovered an issue when we turned off the gas. And when I say gas, I'm talking about cooking gas, right? When they turned off the gas, they discovered an issue. And then I asked them, are you supposed to test pipes on an annual basis every 10 years? You know, like you test roofs, whatever. And because it wasn't NYCHA, right? They had just gotten off the phone with NYCHA. They didn't have the answer. They said the only reason they had to test the pipes was because they needed to turn the gas back on. And there does not seem to be any other like annual maintenance of the pipes.
Okay, that this is one last thing. I remember
Really
when
briefly, Mr. Francis, please.
I remember that they had that fire and explosion in Riverton. And one person, unfortunately, got killed in that one. But when they are finished doing that, they cut off the top 4 floors of that building. But I put the bridge over there. I mean, the first building you see on the left side, when you come across that 138th Street Bridge, Riverton, and so forth. And so we looking at the same scenario being played out here. They wanted to make sure they had to go through that scenario of even though they let half the building stay there, when the other half, they want to make sure they have to go through that scenario or what it was. And boom, evacuate everybody. Hopefully not.
Right. Anyone else before we
There's one more.
So it has to be, so Mr. Chairman, if I may add, is that the point of action of this committee, even though I know we don't have quorum, is that whether we, again, we'll call NYCHA to the table to speak to not only the capital needs relating to this issue of what happened in Mitchell, but this to all overall together capital issues as it relates to our entire portfolio that I mentioned, having one of the largest portfolios. And because it not only is the issue relating to, I mean, our office not only deals with issues around this gas happening in Mitchell's, but persistent issues of mold, leaks, plumbing, not working appliances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, our team is ongoing, have been dealing with these issues. And not only, my understanding, what I think the board needs to get clarity from NYCHA, is that even though we have an $80 billion hole with that's needed to plug in with it to take care of all the issues, does that mean we are slow to respond and take care of all the issues that people have to live in constantly? People are trapped in their apartments and their buildings because they're not working elevators and can't get to their appointments or get deliveries. People are dealing with the issues of not having mail delivered. People are having issues, like I said, all the other things I talked about before. And so these are issues that we must call to response from NYCHA about what is the plan. I mean, I've been around a little long, and so in my time, I would imagine that we hear all kind of different ways that NYCHA is quote unquote dealing with it. You know, they're dealing with centralizing, then decentralizing complaints. We're dealing with all these other issues, and I think that while folks said we have this committee and leadership that we have on our board, we have almost now about maybe 4 NYCHA TA leaders and multiple people who live, majority of our board people who live in NYCHA. And so it is important for this committee to develop, I believe, a point of action to have a conversation with the leaders who are responsible for overseeing our NYCHA developments about what our community and our board's concerns are and the plan going forward. And whether or not that takes place next month or is it something that we take up in January when we have like the new administration, I wanted to bring this to the table as we decide on what issues that each of the committees are working on.
Okay.
Let me ask something real quick before. Who are we getting our like updated information from? Who or what?
So regarding the
regarding the
the
situation.
Mitchells, we receive intergovernmental affairs response, all the stuff of nature about it. And the community board, when the issue first happened, had led weekly virtual calls about the issue. As this issue progressed and as this committee, and that was this action that my office took on because it was emergency situation. So it was the chair of our leadership of our community board. It was the leaders of the Niger Tenants Association. It was the Congress member Richard Torres, Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, Borough President Vanessa Gibson, and Assemblywoman Amanda Septimo. Were I get them all? Elected officials. It was our staff dispatched daily, going out to do supplies with the board members to learn. I remember seeing you a couple of times, and others who were there helping to make sure to get up meals, having conversation. And then what was most important to me, because it was emotional for me, was folks' mental health, mental illness, people who are experiencing this day in and day out. And this is another emergency, and I thank God that no one was hurt. But the time is now. Like I always say with all our issues, is to set a standard, and this is why I'm putting this out to this committee to please give the charge to for the team to be able to do that.
Thank you.
One second, Mr. Francis, she had her hand up.
So Jamie Buxton, I'm not an official committee member. I think it's important that you brought it back to the people, because that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah, the building is an issue, but like, these are the tenants, the residents that are literally facing this right now as we're having this meeting. So the focus should be more so on them. Like, yeah, there's resources that are helping out. We don't know if it's like around the clock or anything, but I feel like communication is a big thing. And as the community board tries to come up with a plan of action, like, we need to kind of try to force NYCHA to give us a plan of action, or at least to communicate with their residents what their plan of action is, and not long term, like what's day in, day out, what's going on. Like, so you said that they had 3 boilers, I think it is, to operate.
Yeah, 3 external boilers.
However many units, it's like, they can make, if it's feasible, I don't know, like, this is just something off the top of my head, time slots for the different lines. So that way everyone has the possibility, the option to have heat and hot water at a certain time frame. If they can't make it at that time frame, like, that's fine, they won't be turned off, but at least they know that they're not guaranteed it.
I think another thing, so one, NYCHA is supposed to be communicating with, so NYCHA has been to Mitchell at least one time to speak with the tenants. Our former board member and a Mitchell resident said that most of the tenants, I would say, was still in trauma or still in grief, so it felt like a very venting session. It didn't feel like, she didn't feel like it was that productive and conducive, but I was like, Ramona, you're an activist, you move a little different. They're supposed to be coming back so they can have regular communications with them, okay? I did tell Ramona when they come back, as we wait for them to come to us, that we could go to, Mitchell's right there, we all can walk there, that our board members should go there and also be at the meeting and to help, like, point of clarification and try to create some structure. But I do want to tell you, the 3 external boilers are supposed to heat people from the bottom floor to the top floor. It is not, it seems. And so the lawyers at Legal Aid was saying that people need to be making the complaints to the NYCHA, but also to 311, because it's not because it's so inconsistent depending on what floor you're on. And even in the room, which I told you only had 20 to 30 people, everyone was like, it wasn't even like clear. It was inconsistent. The heat is inconsistent, but it's supposed to be on 24 hours. It is on, if you go to Mission, you can hear it. It makes like all this noise in the yard. And you can hear it. It's just not as efficient as it's supposed to be, because it's an external boiler.
Okay, Jenny's the whole new point here. What's the assurance that this is not going to occur to another public housing development, number one? And number two, starting last January, before you used to have to bill your rent down to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Starting this past January is gets billed to Binghamton, New York State. Why is that? Because Chase Bank oversees all the rent collection in Nashville. That's moving right now. So you figure it out.
All right, that'll conclude that part of the agenda. Let's move on to street homelessness.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, I don't know, Mr. Chair, are we we tabling the point of action? Is
Yeah.
it November? Is it in
Well, I mean,
January?
you have
Is
to
it?
ask, I would,
We should circle back again on this.
no, it's not circle back, I think you asked them to see when they're available,
Yeah.
and that we know NYCHA is supposed to be going
Yeah.
to Mitchell. We can also meet them at Mitchell, obviously, when they're at Mitchell, the issue's solely Mitchell, and when they're with us, the issue is a bigger portfolio.
Exactly.
I agree with you, though, that we're better off in January under the new administration. I hear you.
You bring it
That
now.
part, I see what you mean with that.
Bring them in now,
That's the
coach.
issue, so.
Mitchell's pressing, they're going to Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're talking about our entire portfolio in a global conversation, I think we have those conversations when we have a new administration, because the other ones come here and be like,
Yeah.
oh, pass the buck.
I forgot about that. Yeah, January is good, new administration, budget policy.
I didn't read their NYCHA policy, but there is a NYCHA policy on Zoran Kwame Mandana's website.
All right.
If he wins, I'm sure there's one on Cole's website, but I have good feelings about him, so.
January is okay.
Let's discuss street homelessness, of which we have a big problem here. Anything specific we should be discussing, just open it up.
I could start the basis of it. So, through continuous advocacy that we had with this committee and the request of Danny Barber, we were able to invite the Department of Social Services, Department of Homeless Services, Deputy Commissioner for Street Homeless to be able to come to speak to the issue that we saw that has been generally throughout our entire district. I talked to some of our private building owners and some financial developments where street homeless has been an issue where we have been seeing has been persistent ever since before the Roberto Clemente closure. And what is the policy of this Department of Homeless Services with the street homeless agency contracts? We understand there's one major street homeless service organization, Bronx Works, that's supposed to be outreaching, supposed to be interacting with our brothers and sisters who are unhoused and looking to not enter the shelter system for whatever reason may be, whether it's safety, whether there's other issues, and they are unfortunately found in our NYCHA developments and our private buildings and so on. And sometimes they may be suffering from a mental health issue and may be in danger of themselves or someone else. Unrelated to that, or related to that directly, we were able to get the Deputy Commissioner, Cassandra White, and some of the other members of our of the Department of Homeless Services leadership staff to come to our November committee meeting that's confirmed to be able to answer some questions about how we help our brothers and sisters who are looking to be who need access to resources and services who are street homeless. We understand that under this current administration, unfortunately, the street homeless services outreach is very centralized, which means that if I interact with Jay or Joe Nick Bone in the street, I'm an outreach worker for the street homeless outreach division, I have to contact and see if there's a space and get permission to put him or her into whatever facility. And it's no longer there's not a deep centralized system where you can just go and make sure you drive the person and put them directly into the shelter. So that may take 72 hours now currently in a centralized system. That person, when you reach out to them, say on 138th Street, you go back to 138th Street, they're not going to be there. They may have moved to 3rd Avenue, they may have moved to St. Mary's Park, they may have moved to some other location throughout the district, and therefore we may have lost direct contact with that person.
Sorry, point of clarification. So if a street outreach person sees an unhoused person who agrees, because we know sometimes they don't agree, agrees to go to a shelter, that outreach person cannot immediately escort them?
That's correct.
Why is that?
Because you got to find permission to decide what facility can accept that person, whether it is mental health issues.
So that's illegal, because everybody
That's
knows
my understanding.
you have a right to shelter, right?
Right.
That's it. And we have a right to shelter for everybody. There's a limitation for our migrants, our new migrants. But if you are a resident of New York City, you cannot be denied shelter. you will be at the intake shelter, intake place, like you said at Bellevue, maybe for 2 or 3 days until we find a permanent, air quotes around permanent location for you. But you will be able to walk into the men's shelter if you're single, women's shelter, the family walk-in shelter, and there will be a cot or whatever for you to lay your head. And what takes 2 or 3 days is what will be your permanent shelter location.
Okay.
And so I understand because I've seen that district cabinet meeting, DSS. I understand our street homeless sometimes be like, I don't want to go. That part consistent. But if someone says yes, and most of our street homeless are New Yorkers. I don't know what part, or American citizens. Most of our street mentally ill, substance abuse dependent are citizens of this country. Okay, they automatically.
And then most of the time, to add to your point, they are taken into a drop-in center facility, which may speak to that situation that's not permanent, and they do not have a bed. The drop-in centers, there are not beds. They stand or either sit in chairs for most of that evening. So the drop-in centers necessarily are oversaturated with our brothers and sisters who need those services. That's my understanding. Is not.
So I think what we need to have come here is the legal aid homeless outreach team.
Nope.
Because it looks like people's rights are being violated and we're not aware of that. But DSS knows the law. Like literally we're known for suing them. And so people who because I have my clients, especially when I used to represent Parents Against ACS, you get a bed. You get a bed, even if your baby's taken away, you get a bed. And drop-in center is not the intake center. So like the door is a drop-in center. And so I don't really know the facts of drop-in centers.
Sure.
But if someone says, I'm willing to go and get a bed
that evening, and likely in an intake center, and people have concerns around whether safety or.
Yes, I hear people. I do.
Yeah.
I hear people not wanting to go to single women or single men shelters for safety reasons. That I hear a lot. I hear a lot.
And intake facilities, and it's in the Bronx, are the Franklin Avenue Women's Shelter, which is in the, right up the block here going to Fulton, and our Bellevue Center, which is all the way down in Manhattan, which is also intake for sometimes for people who are battling mental health illnesses. So we have invited the deputy commissioner who is in charge of this particular division which is the most senior executive person for that, to explain this. And in addition, I could add the deputy commissioner or the associate commissioner in charge of shelter operations, because we have not been We have not been able to know the siting of some of our shelters. We know in the South Bronx we have an oversaturation of emergency or shelter sites here, and some known and some unknown to this community board. But I say that because under the fair share, which is a policy or isn't a law, but that we should be able to have shelters that be equally shared with fortunately amongst the borough is not. We have in an old the Bowser administration map, North Bronx, there are some community boards that have anywhere between 2 or 3 facilities, and we have we have I'm averaging off and not knowing the number right now. We have over 20 this in our community board, and our community board is a small map there. We have a little over 200,000 constituents, and so all that to say is that we are also interested about how these shelters are also operating. Now, each shelter does not operate the same way, does not provide the same resources and services. Are they meeting needs? Are they truly working to be able to house our unhoused brothers and sisters and families who need access to housing? Are they providing the necessary resources to training so they can be able to sustain and hold on to that permanent housing? So all those questions are long-term questions this committee and the full board has had, and so I've been able to confirm those 2 folks that will be attending. So if this committee will have to work with each other, but also hopefully with our office to make sure we have pointed questions to be able to get answers of it at all. So like we have done with the migrant facility, we wrote our questions out, we figured who will answer what questions, so we all that stuff, we're rolling on each other, so those questions could all be.
I see someone's hand, but I do wanna say this. We learned this recently. Our shelters, which are considered transitional housing, because people cycle out of them, and then supportive housing is not under DSS and is considered permanent housing. And I know we complain, and SROs are also considered permanent housing. And so DSS is gonna be, and so that means when they give us our number, they distinguish shelters where people are cycling in and out from supportive housing and SROs, which I know might have a feeling about all of them together as one, but shelters are distinct from supportive housing and SROs, which are permanent housing. And so therefore the numbers might sound lower than we feel, even though we are talking about a similar population.
And I want to add before we go to Ms. Humphrey, if I could, Chair, I'm sorry, yell at me later, is that we're not, this committee, this board is not all saying, does not have a NIMBY personality by saying that in our backyard, because we all know that all our brothers and sisters are all in need of temporary housing, and we all know that, well, I know, for me personally, yet by God, I am one check or so away from that same situation. So we want to be able, but we also want to make sure that fairly, that this is that our other community boards have shared their representation and house some of our shelter facilities also, in addition to making sure that our shelters are not just becoming a business, but becoming a real resource where people are working to truly be able to transition out of that and into permanent housing when all the housing is being developed, but also they're given resources to while they're making themselves whole, to be able to maintain it by whether it's employment, whether it is other resources and services, whether it's mental health services or other family wraparound services to make sure they can maintain their housing. So that is why this question is to have. One, what are we doing? What's the policy? What's happening in the North Bronx? What's happening in the South Bronx? Where are the facilities in the North Bronx? Where are in the South Bronx? How are we making sure that each of these contracted agencies, some of them multi-million-dollar contracts, are really truly providing our brothers and sisters who are needing these services, the resources and services they truly need, and that's our yield, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'll add, you brought up fair share, if I remember correctly, at that time, 60% of the population in shelters in the Bronx were people that were not even from the Bronx.
Exactly.
So that's a concerning statistic. It might be even higher now, but who knows? Before we get to you, someone else had their hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jasmine Humphrey here, resident of Villa Verde, non-official community member. I just have because this whole issue is not new to this community, and so I'm curious if we have insight from prior administrations with this community board that could be referenced before these people come to these meetings, and more that we can rely on, like facts in terms of insight into what was prior proposals or plan of actions, and seeing what the gaps were. And if that doesn't, beyond just kind of like talking points, is there an opportunity to have an actual like plan of action that can be like held, that can hold these agencies and or individuals to accountability? Because I'm more so interested in what's been done like over the past 10 years, because this is an issue that has existed long before any of us were in this room.
Well, from my experience, they don't provide information at all. So you ask, and they might say that the information has to remain private because of, people, it's a sense that they just don't give information. So you have to like really search, and whatever you get is already outdated. Like that fair share, those numbers are from 2021. That's 4 years ago, approaching 5. So.
But even within like CB1, or I'm saying like, do we not have records from the committee?
So I can answer your question. So unfortunately, a lot of it, because of the recent structural issue where we lost a lot of our documents that were historic for the community board, meaning meaning that are you asking what did my predecessor do 10 years ago around this issue? If it's documentary wise, it is somewhat sketchy because a lot of the stuff was destroyed. So a large flood and steam leak that destroyed not our furniture, but this whole office was closed for a little over half a year. And that was just recently. But adding to what the chair said, and is that there are different administration has different policies in the way they react to community boards and to elected officials, to each other, and so on. Historically, like he mentioned in the previous administration, there was a desire to be able to have an interactive map where sightings for these shelters, without giving exact addresses to where they're located and what community boards was shared. And at that time, the numbers were for how many shelters we had were high. During my tenure here, and definitely before my tenure, which is very memorable for me here at this community board, there has always been adding more shelters, never decreasing the shelters. It actually was an accelerated rate where shelters are being sited in Community Board 1. In addition to that, it was only this past through my tenure here, the former chair of the board and this current chair have been working on a tracking system that we're still developing that will speak to all the issues. What are the community benefit agreements? Where the housing is going? Who has it been going to? So we're working on a system that's going to better track all those systems and be able to have I think before the end of it's going to take at least a year to be able to really put that all together. But in conversations that we have had, and let me add one more thing, and also in the previous administration, but not in this administration, there's something called community advisory boards that each shelter will require to open a community advisory board. So besides the community board, members of the community can be able to go to those monthly meetings and talk and make sure that our shelter our organizations are good neighbors, and then we can be able to help work out any of the situations that have been happening that wouldn't have happened before the shelter was sited there, or whatever the issues may be. And also it was opportunities where we were able to put on activities and events and for in a neighboring way for the shelters, providing play activities for the kids and ensuring that they were involved in and shelters involved in block parties and ensuring that they had extra activities when for clothing drives or school or book bag drives. All those things. Unfortunately, in this administration, I can't fairly say that has been something in my tenure here. And I came in very early on in this administration. It was not something that was had. So a policy that was not a policy that was enforced in the previous administration about citing which community board these shelters are in is a policy that appeared in this administration by citing we cannot share these locations, whatever specific reasons why. And again, we were not looking to have these conversations in an adversarial way. We were just trying to point out the inequities and the unfairness of looking at our northern community boards and saying this can't. The math is not mathing. That's the official to say. And so it was. So at the end of the day, we need to see like where there's bucals of land and housing opportunities. How are we making sure that our brothers and sisters who have these access to these vouchers that were created, whether it's the access or housing, why they don't have this access to first building the shelters or placing our folks inside? So you're desegregating folks, even in the same barrel. And so those are all concerns that the administration didn't want to give us the key to that. So we're now, of course, at the end of the administration, we're at the door. We are getting, gladly so, because I appreciate my colleagues in the Department of Homeland Services. We have very passionate conversations about a lot of different things. They want to come to the table. This may be another conversation we rebuild up or start up again in January as we look at what new innovative things will come from whatever administration it evolves. So but I just want to make this committee aware so that we, again, prepared for these type of conversations. And I know what you're going, you're saying, have we looked at historically where we've been to point out where stuff this has been getting worse and not getting better over a period of time, I guess. which is maybe.
Yeah, it's just more so making sure that we're
Yeah.
just, it's not a cyclical conversation
Sure.
with this administration, with this committee, because
Sure.
seems to be a prevalent issue, and just that we're like, okay, what has been proposed in the past clearly hasn't worked.
So, but it's not about, I want to be very clear, Herman, can be very informative, is right. People don't vote. You're not, the North Bronx votes more, it's more affluent. If you put it's NIMBY, not in my backyard. If you put a shelter there, we literally have a Republican city council member. And literally the reason why the Democrat lost was over a shelter fight, okay? NIMBY. We are the lowest voter turnout. In fact, our current city council member won by 4,500 votes, okay? That is it. There's way more than 4,500 people in this district that is registered to vote who did not vote. So if nobody wants the shelters, I gotta agree with Eric Adams on this. Nobody wants the shelters, okay? He said that. He said now Salamanca's district, which this was, and now there's a place, I guess, in like Southside Jamaica that is oversaturated with shelters. Nobody wants the shelters. So you place them where you're going to get the least political pushback. So 4,500 people won't vote for me. Okay, I can still win, right? And so I tell people when we're doing voter registration this summer, even if you put you suck, go into the booth and go vote so they know you're watching. And so I don't know what happened before us, but even if we advocate very loud, very clear, it is still, if I am making a political decision and I need a shelter because there's 8.5 million people here and counting, and I can put them on the streets. If they want to be in the shelter, I need to create more shelters. I'm going to put in a place where there's least political pushback. And so I think we can be strong advocates. We can articulate stuff. But if people don't vote, I don't know. I mean, I love Zoran, I love Kwame, but even he's going to be nervous about re-election. You know what I mean? And if you put it in the North Bronx, they're going to be with picket sticks all over you. You know what I mean? You lose 10,000 votes. You lose 20,000 votes. You know, that could be make or break. The Bronx already has low voter turnout. And so the shelters are, I'm sure Staten Island's oversaturated too because they're the lowest after us. And so I think the calculus is not even more than advocacy. It's a political calculation based on voter turnout.
Before we move on to this, you had a point that you want to share?
I was going to reinforce what you're going to say ahead in regards to the low turnouts and how to advocate for people to actually start voting in our community board specifically. I live in Valle Verde, and I know that was Bloomberg's baby. So under his administration, we have so much buildings coming up, you know, which has been the segue to the new buildings coming up. And then also, I'm not advocating speaking on behalf of my agency, but Department of City Planning, when they did the revamp of 3rd Avenue, that was a big change and a push out of a lot of things. But a lot of things have changed and closed in the neighborhood that has, especially with the pandemic, has brought so much homeless to the streets that we actually need another clean out and another renovation of the revitalization of the neighborhood again. Because what we have right now, nobody wants to come in to build on this because it doesn't look like it's buildable. Meaning to bring finances and profit back to 3rd Avenue again. Like Mr. Fuentes said, I remember as a kid coming to 3rd Avenue and I was from 143rd in Amsterdam. That was like going to Fordham Road. So you have certain, or J Street, in Brooklyn, Fulton. So it's like, this is a place where money, it brings money. But it's just the fact of right now, it doesn't look like you want to put into the community because the community doesn't look like it's worth it for the way it looks right now. So it looks like we would have to do a big revitalization as far as building it back up, but we would really have to move things like a big cleanup again.
But cleanup, where are we putting the people? They're human.
That's
They're not
the
trash.
thing.
So
Right.
where are you putting the humans? Also, we talk to Pedro a lot because obviously I live in a condo up the street, and I'm like, why we don't have no sit-down restaurant? We are commercial landlords. Their prices don't look like the streets. They asking for big money. They're waiting for Applebee's to come on the block or Starbucks on the block. So some of that revitalization issue is small businesses cannot afford to get any commercial space on the hub because the landlords are not dropping the price despite how it's outside.
Yeah.
Oh, it's last point, cause
Briefly,
ground-
we gotta talk about this.
you know, we'll get to it.
What is this?
This is, new shelters,
Yeah, you're
site-
talking-
site.
Which goes right back, when they first built that building over there on Wilson Avenue Bridge, that top when you see when you come up down across that bridge, it's supposed to be a co-op. What happened was landlord, couldn't get no buyers for no apartments, so he stopped accepting our city vouchers. Well, I went to that 40th city council meeting, the commanding officer said the high rate of reported criminal activity in the resident making was through the roof. That's been already, you gonna see when you come across that bridge over there, it used to be co-op. That goes back to what's going on over here. The issue was, and they mentioned during the campaign, that New York City House Authority has over 6,000 vacant apartments. I remember I used to go door to door, and the neighbor people in the court say, oh, that apartment's vacant, it's vacant 2 or 3 years. Got the padlock up here. They built a public house for one reason in the 30s, under LaGuardia. That city workers couldn't afford the higher rent. Now they say that New York City is the second most expensive city in the world to live in. Hong Kong is number 1. And the most expensive place to live in New York City is Hudson Yards. The second most expensive place is Little Italy. Now you figure it out, because I remember, I'm gonna finish up with this. I remember when I was a youngster, when my father used to drive us out to visit relatives, he used to go down there on the Valley, take the Brooklyn Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge. All these bones that used to be out there, they were talking about the 50s now. All of a sudden, this article came up in the 60s, what happened to the bones in the Valley? It disappeared. What did the city do?
Mr. Francis, we're gonna talk about this,
So same as this happened. It's a mess.
this is, staying on topic with shelters, we have a letter from the Department of Social Services
Yeah.
indicating that they will, they plan to open up a shelter
Tell them no.
in the district. So I'll just, you guys all have this in front of you, but I'll just read at least the first paragraph
Yeah.
for the record. So the shelter will be at 780 East 135th Street. The capacity will be for 107 families with children. The nonprofit service provider is NICA. I believe I'm saying that right?
Mhm.
The anticipated opening is late 2027. I'll just read the first paragraph. It says, as part of New York City's moral and legal obligation to provide shelter, we are committed to ensuring that every community and borough has high quality resources to provide critical supports for our neighbors in need. This transitional housing facility will offer dedicated supports to 107 families with children experiencing homelessness, prioritizing placement for those who fall on hard times in the community and giving them the opportunity to stabilize their lives close to their anchors of life. We may disagree with that statement, but the fact remains that they do want to open this in the district. Obviously, there are some feelings about that, but Mr. District Manager, do you have any information to add to this discussion?
Right, so adding to what colleague Delaney said, that that they are, this is, they're not asking for permission. It's a citing notice that we get from our shelters in our community. And we are, as you look at the second page of this letter, it doesn't say when the shelters are going to open, but it's the second page of this letter, but it's anticipated late 2027, meaning they have entered into a contract. We are inviting members of this committee to join the CAP, the Community Advisory Board, for this facility. The community board is aware of the leaders of this organization. While I don't hold any position on this, how they operate their facilities, I just want to make sure that there's transparency, that with submission to this, our new chairperson wants to continue to act. When we see these notices, we'll share this with the committee so you're aware of where the facilities are going to go, because there was a time where we were for this, we were not receiving notices or where the shelters were at. And so, all that to say is that, as the letters continue coming out, we'll continue to provide these to the and if there are, and folks who are interested in joining the CAP, please feel free to let us know so we can be able to,
That's across the street from Millbrook Housing, right? 780, 135th Street.
yes, sir.
It's on that side, yeah.
Yes, sir.
As you can see, I mean, they don't, there's no mechanism for us to even chime in as to say
What did the
whether or
tennis,
not we.
what did the tennis association present down there, local health?
Priscilla?
Is that on night shift,
Land.
No, I understand that, well, what did they say about this coming to be in their vicinity?
We received the
Well,
7
this
today, Mr.
was,
Francis.
yeah,
And we're forming the committee first, and then if there's others, we will share this on our website if you want.
And I also want to be very clear, number one, usually the issues we're having are not with our family and children's shelters. I remember I got into a very deep rabbit hole and someone was telling me that we should check the service providers.
Yes.
So every shelter, like right now, the way we talk about shelters is like all the shelters have a disruption, right? But there are certain shelters or certain supportive housings that are ran by better nonprofits than others, actually. And so someone was like, and then one thing the city can do is switch providers. Like the shelter will stay, but if NICA is not doing a good job, then NICA can lose the contract and they'll get another thing. And so because we didn't, like, obviously I didn't have capacity, but because we don't know where all the shelters are, but like, for example, we know the migrant shelter is not, something's going on over there, right? There's people on the highway, yada, yada, yada. So that complaint is easier target for them to resolve, for the city to resolve, than no shelters, which is what we want, but that's gonna be harder for them to resolve.
And I'm gonna add one thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is that we are asking if any of our nonprofit providers in the district who are providing shelters are on corrective action plans caps, so that we under the FOIA request, asking for what those agreements are, so we can understand and share with the executive committee what, if there are any actionable items or discrepancies on delivery of services to the families of those children. So if these shelters are not operating according to or meeting the milestones according to their contract, that immediately, as soon as they put on the correction action plan, share that immediately with our executive, with the district manager, who share with the executive committee, so that we can devise on what we want to push for, change of contract, because they're not going to shut down unless there's some extreme structural issues. They're not going to shut down.
Okay, here's what this next.
Also, you put your 311 calls, 311 calls.
You have something?
I just had two questions, they're very small. So one was for clarification, when we receive these, they're telling us they have found the site and they putting the people there.
Yes.
That's my first one. My
Yes.
second one is, for example, let's say NICA isn't doing a good job and they can swap out basically a vendor, provider, right? How, I guess it's a two-part question. How do we know it's not somebody operating under a different name, like contract-wise? And then two, how do we know like the person who swaps it out is like has a good running history?
So that's what the person was telling me when I was having coffee with this person, is that because we talk about shelters in this huge bubble,
Yeah,
we don't know who the providers is, right? Because the DSS is contracting all of that out. And so we don't, because if you know, like, no news is good news,
Yeah.
right? And we don't know all the shelters, right? We might be next to one that we think they're regular people, regular
Right.
place. And so if we become more versed with the locations that are public, and then we be like, oh, this shelter, I didn't even know. Then we could be like the providers, and then we could be like, yes. And then I think when we do the 311 complaints, then we're gonna be like, this building got the most 311 complaints.
Yeah.
Whoever's dealing this with this building, I don't know their name, but it's a no. Something's wrong with them, right?
Put it like this.
And so that, because we can always get our 311 list. That's public information.
that's
Yeah.
why I liked your comment for the district manager when you said we are hoping that they're running it not as a business
Yes.
and they're getting the resources. So when you said that, it made me really like think about it. Like these are like business opportunities instead of really being helpful to the community.
Right.
Think about it.
So we have that as a point of information. In terms of, for this committee, point of action would be if there are any questions, for this discussion next month, that you guys would like to float or whatever, the deadline is Friday, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Friday.
It'll be Friday.
Yeah, to give it to the, district manager in case anyone has any
Yeah,
questions.
Oh, yeah, who's advocating for a shelter to be put there? Yeah, okay.
That's a question that you can, prepare and we'll ask that on.
No, I'm
I don't
putting
know,
that.
advocate, you mean who's deciding?
No, who pushes for Chelsea?
No, not yet, not
Oh,
yet.
That's something, who pushes for Chelsea?
So you guys, so just to be clear, the questions are,
Yeah.
due Friday for the discussion in November
Repeat it
regarding, can you repeat exactly what, for the audience, so they know what?
Sure, Jake, so for our two meetings, that if you have questions that you wish to add to the plethora of questions that will be asked in the November discussion
Right,
for the street homeless deputy commissioner
yeah,
and for the associate commissioner for shelter operations,
right.
please, shelter operations definition, the shelters that are already existing, the brick and mortars and how they operate and what services and resources be provided, traditionally, non-traditional, et cetera, et cetera. Because there are, so that means, and then for street homeless, how do we, for the outreach plan and how the interactions happen, understanding decentralizing, centralizing, et cetera. What those questions, that's for the street homeless, those questions should be submitted for, to our office by 5 o'clock, close the business if possible, since give us 6 o'clock.
This day, Halloween.
Friday, that's the day I got it, so whatever it is, your day, you guys, the day after our board meeting, our general board meeting. And we put them in writing, and then we'll compile those questions and have it available, we'll send the whole, if they're not repetitive, the questions will be asked, will be shared after they're, given to the committee chair, we'll add them to them, and we'll say, Laverne, you asked this question, Herman, you asked this question, everybody will be assigned a certain amount of questions. And then you may sometimes expand the amount of the questions related to questions you have, similar to what we did for the migrant facility questions. So my email is ajordan@cb.nysc.gov, and just make sure if there's an email that's unfamiliar to me, that just say, hey, it is me, it is I, whoever it is. All right, that's what I have. Thank you.
All right, does anyone else have, anything to add? We do not need a motion to adjourn, so, thank you guys for coming.
oh, good job.
Have a great evening and.
Yeah, I'm safe.
We come with the same page, we Chelsea, $100 back to taxes, no cooking. Now you do the math with that. It's a business, if somebody get that contract.